Hey everybody, my name is Mustafa. I am a game developer and game designer. I have some years of experience in the game industry. I've worked at Treyarch for 3 years doing administrative work. I've also done QA work with Zwift, which is a cycling company. And I'm going to be talking about the Splitgate 2 controversy with Oujirou over here.
Hi, I'm Oujirou. I've been working in games for like 15 years now, on the programming side though. So coming at it from a little different perspective. Yeah.
So just a quick recap, there's too much to recap, but just for those who haven't been paying too much attention, there's been a lot of controversy with the CEO who's been working on Splitgate, or the lead designer and CEO, ever since they showed off the game at Summer Games Fest. So we're going to give our thoughts on the situation. There's a lot to talk about, and I feel like some of it is not related to actual game development and not actually related to the game itself. So I want to talk about that first, and then we'll go talk about the game itself. But a lot of it's coming from the fact that he wore a hat, a black hat that says "Make FPS Great Again." And if he did not wear that hat, I feel like a lot of this, no one would be talking about this. Like very, very few people would be talking about Splitgate 2 in a negative sense if he wasn't wearing that hat.
I don't know if we'd be talking about it at all.
Yeah. So I have multiple opinions. I do feel like when we get around to everything, the logic will stay consistent. But as far as the hat itself, I don't know if you're going to agree with me or not, Oujirou, but I feel like there's two different points of views. One, people are taking this way too seriously. Like they're getting upset about the hat when they shouldn't be. But at the same time, even though I think people shouldn't be upset over the hat, but you should know better than to not realize that it would get people upset. What do you think, Oujirou?
I think it's very much a meme, right? So I think if you're in an environment where you're like, oh, it's just a meme, this is no big deal, I think it's perfectly fine. But at the same breath, there's a lot of people that are really upset about anything politics right now. And right as we're recording this, LA's on fire. And you've got people that are like, oh no, this is totally okay because like this is resisting the current administration. And that is some of the people that are going to go online on Twitter and yeah, the CEO wore the hat and everything, but the people that are running the socials and the community management, they're going to be the ones that are tanking any kind of harassment from the community. I don't know how many people that are upset about this are actually players of the game. I saw what he said in his video, and that actually got me to download the game. I was like, sure, I'll give it a shot. Like, if you're going to be really arrogant and pop off like that, then sure, let's see if it's a good game or not. So I'm kind of torn. One part of me, from the perspective of getting people to install the game, I think this was great. It got me to get it, and I ignore most games in general, even if they're free to play. On the other hand, they have an established audience through Splitgate 1, so they should have the ability to get metrics to say, are there people that are actually in our community that are upset about this? And from that, they'll make an informed decision on if you need to like apologize like the CEO ultimately ended up doing here.
The thing is, like he apologized and he admit that he wasn't ignorant about it. So like, why'd you wear it then? Like he should have, at the very least, I think he should have doubled down and said, yeah, I knew this is going to happen.
I think right now, in general, no one wants to see any level of politics out of game developers, like no matter what side they're on. I think it's fine for people to have like their personal opinions and say like, look, this is my personal opinion. This doesn't impact games. But I think in general, people are really tired of game developers telling them how they should feel and think. I did look at this whole thing mostly as a stunt to get people to look at the game, because it's not just the hat. It's also like being like, oh man, I wanted Titanfall 3 and, Call of Duty sucks. I was like, oh, wow, that's very unusual compared to like, what's his name? Sven Vick, the guy at Baldur's Gate 3, who would go on and be like, oh, he like also made a speech at the Game Awards show where it was very negative towards the industry, but it was done in a positive way where it was like, oh, you have the ability to become Game of the Year if you just do something that your players want. It was very player focused and everyone was like, wow, he really said a lot about the state of the industry, where it was like, there's a lot of games that don't care about the player.
Yeah.
Which is true. So it's tough. The amount of publicity that he got by wearing this hat is worth its weight in gold, right?
Well, yes,
so many people saw this that got out there.
I think the way he apologized, though, he basically lost at all ends. Because if he didn't double down and say, yeah, I knew this was gonna cause controversy, like, at least if he would apologize and say something along the lines of like, yeah, I figured this would be controversial, but I didn't realize it was going to be this controversial. It was a mistake in my judgment. Like, I think that would have been a better out than been like, oh, I just thought it was going to be a funny meme. Like the way how he apologized, I don't agree with how he did. It did not make him win in any angle. But going to what you're saying about, like being constructive about the industry, I do see a lot of people most of these are the same people who are complaining about the hat, who are complaining about him talking smack about, Call of Duty and, these other first-person shooters. And I think those people, it's like, where have you been living all your lives? Because in the video game industry, smack talk has always existed. Sega does what Nintendo don't. Like, that's always been a thing. Like, the game companies have always been talking smack about each other. When I was working at Treyarch, we were working on the Battle Royale mode. At the time, it was called, for Black Ops 4, it's called Blackout Mode. Now it's Warzone. It's a standalone product. But at the time, Blackout Mode for Call of Duty Black Ops 4. So we had this, what's it called? Those corkscrew boards where you pin stuff on there. We had this board where developers were just printing out these memes and pinning them on there to just help motivate them. And they're all like these memes that people were posting online, and they're like, okay, we're going to print this out. And they're all basically memes that are made by Call of Duty fans talking smack about Fortnite, because that was like that was the big thing. And so like even internally, like it's the developers, they don't like hate the guys at Epic. It's not that, but talking smack is just a thing of competition. Like that just goes hand in hand.
And I recall seeing some folks that actually worked on, I think it was Call of Duty 6, that were like getting really up in their feelings over it. And I don't think, like I think we have an issue in general in our industry where we have a lot of really fragile people that get very upset, take things very personally, where if I'm going to criticize Call of Duty, I'm not attacking the team working on Call of Duty. I'm looking at it like, look, this is a $60, $70 game. I'm sure the next one's going to be 80, filled to the brim with microtransactions. I loved playing, was it Call of Duty 4, Advanced Warfare? Like that, I think that was the peak for me. So I'm criticizing like a lot of the product decisions. A lot of this is driven by investors that are saying we need to maximize the amount of revenue that this product makes. And that just is what it is for that team. I'm not attacking the executives, because like a lot of them, it's not their choice. They're going to go to a board meeting, and the board meeting is going to say, I demand a battle pass. I demand like this price for all of your stuff. Like we want it, these are the KPIs that we expect you to hit. And all that's very boring business stuff. And that's where I'm like, yeah, I don't like Call of Duty. But I'm not attacking any one individual. So I feel like we need to be able to have these conversations where it's like, look, there's a lot of these games that suck. And it's not because of the developers that it sucks. Mm-hmm. It's because a lot of these companies are run by investors, and these investors they're not even good investors. And they're making a lot of the decisions for how a lot of these pricing models work because they can just get away with it. Yeah. Or at least they think they can.
To be fair, the Splitgate Twitter account did call out an individual who worked on a Call of Duty. I just know the guy's name showed up as like Luke on this handle. I don't know his last name, but it was kind of lighthearted though. The tweet said something along the lines of like, "Which Call of Duty did you work on again? They all seem the same to me," or something along those lines.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like the worst thing in the world. Like they didn't say like, your mother is terrible.
Yeah, yeah.
It was just kind of poking fun at the franchise as a whole.
Yeah, and like I come from the mobile space for a lot of the games that I've worked on, and a lot of us know that we're not the target audience for these games, and we're just like, it's not my thing, whatever. But if the players like it, that's what matters. So we're good at compartmentalizing it to say, I'm making a game, it's not for me, but we need to listen to the audience on what they want. That's the design philosophy to get those games running. Because especially early mobile games, it was like decorators. I was going home and playing like World of Tanks or some kind of Total War game, and then I would go like help make a decorator because it was like after the financial crisis, there were no jobs in the games industry I could get into. This was all I could do, and Sally Mae needed their money.
Yeah.
You just split that apart. Whereas with AAA, especially, I think people get really like they take an unhealthy relationship with the game and they don't separate it. And they're like, oh, I'm going to do self inserts into like these characters, especially with writers. I think writers are the worst that we have to deal with in the industry.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just bad.
I definitely think this whole mentality of like, oh, you can't say anything negative about other devs, you're hurting their feelings. Like this whole mentality, it's making soft people, it reinforces the whole toxic positivity. This aspect has been being brought more to light due to the fact of all these studios that are bringing terrible games. Like all these developers who are getting laid off, they're like, yeah, this studio had toxic positivity. Like with Concord, that was a big thing. Everyone was too afraid of saying what they really thought about the game. And I mean, like when I was at Treyarch, I don't know if I wasn't a developer there, so I didn't give too much input on the game. But like we'd have some internal showings. For example, before a trailer gets released, it would be internally shown within the studio. We have like a little theater, and we basically just have the trailer running constantly for like a few hours. People walk in, and so I remember one of the trailers. It was the announcement trailer for not the game itself, but for the not operators, but basically different classes, whatever. I can't remember what they're called in Call of Duty Black Ops 4, but the different operators for the multiplayer. And I recall when I walked out of the theater, I saw one of the like senior producers. He had like a big smile on his face. He was pretty excited about it. He was like, great trailer, right? I was like, well, it conveyed the information well. I get the idea of what each character does, but that song is just overplayed. It was not a good song to use. I can't remember which song it is. It's some Guns N' Roses song, something that is like used all the time. And
they probably paid a lot for it.
Yeah, and then he had like this, like he went from grinning to like had this like, oh type of face, and I'm not gonna take credit for this because I don't know what happened behind closed doors and meetings. But they eventually used a different song for once they released the actual trailer. Like the trailer also had a few changes to it, but basically it was like the same trailer except a different song. And the fact that they changed the song tells me that I wasn't the only one thinking that. The point of this story is the fact that it's like, people are afraid to tell someone higher up that, yeah, this isn't good, but like you should speak up because other people must be thinking the same thing as well when it's not looking good. Let's transition over to talking about the game and the development as itself, Splitgate. So even though they've been talking smack and people are like, getting their feelings hurt over, the smack talk, I think that aspect is pointless. I mean, like they don't have a good point if they're just complaining about like the fact that they're talking smack on, especially on social media and calling out other games. But there is the other aspect that they're talking smack and they're talking the talk and they're not walking the walk. I've seen a lot of people. I didn't play the game myself. You played it, Oujirou, a little bit, but
A bit, yeah.
it seems like a lot of people are saying, yeah, the big problem with them talking smack is that they're not putting their money where their mouth is.
Yeah, so the gunplay I found to be pretty satisfying. Like I played Splitgate 2, not with the time I have, which at this age, like it's hard to get time to play games. And then I
know what you mean.
played Splitgate 1 as well, just to be like, okay, what are the differences here? And for 2, while the gunplay is good, I'm not a BR guy. Like I liked PUBG, and then since then everything's just been like meh as far as I've been concerned. So it's not to my liking. The progression in terms of like the battle pass is really unsatisfying. It's very much like here's your battle pass rank. Like you get one item of this thing, and then I got 10 of their premium currency somehow, even though it's supposed to be purchase only. I don't even know how I got it. Everything in the store is pretty expensive, which there's no pay to win stuff in there. Like that's the big thing for me. Like I don't want to see something where it's like certain characters or certain weapons or whatever are locked behind a battle pass. Like I think that was the thing that really killed Overwatch 2 for me, is where they were like, oh, we'll put characters behind the battle pass. So it was like, oh, now I can't take a break from the game because I won't get. They're like, oh, it's on the free track. It's like, but if I miss a season, like I'm no longer competitive. I mean, the game sucked in general, so it wasn't a big loss. But like, there's none of that stuff where I'm like, this is like a bad thing purely. It's a lot of cosmetics. But I feel like we all, as players, we want to unlock things. Like there's a limit to the experience you can get on all the weapons. So there's that cap there, and then you want to progress something else, and there's just not much else there to progress right now. So it's that's something they need to address. Well, I don't know if they need to. They have the metrics on like what it's going to be, and a lot of people complained about really expensive cosmetics. Which I get. It's like, you see something that's really expensive in the store cosmetics wise, and you're just like, who the hell buys that? But people buy those things. That's just like the amount of money people spend on cosmetics on games is insane.
Yeah.
And like hundreds of millions of dollars every year. So, if that's what keeps the game free, and there are people that are engaging with those purchases, like you don't have to. You can say, this sucks, I don't like this. I prefer the approach of smaller purchase sizes and more purchases versus like one big purchase. Like one of the games I pretty consistently get cosmetics in it's a game called Nikkei, which is a gacha game. I'm kind of familiar
with it. I don't know too much about it. I just see people posting girls' butts, and I'm like, why is this on my feed?
Yeah, the story is fantastic, but they have like $20 skins in there as part of their kind of like battle pass system. But then they also have these gacha skins that are $60 effectively, and I won't buy those. Like I would have bought it for 20, but if you're like, oh no, it's effectively $60, you could theoretically get it because it's like you have to spin a wheel and there's a percentage chance you get the skin, but the odds are so stacked against you, you're going to spend $60. I did that once, and then I was like, never again, and I didn't even play that character. So like, yeah, smaller purchases is much easier for people to like mentally get, where it's like, okay, $10 for this thing, sure, $20 for that thing if it's something you really like. But seeing these like big packages, even though they sell, like I know the Nikkei packages at $60 for those skins, they do sell, but they get so much flack online for just existing. Like you got a lot of people that are like, I really don't like this, I don't like this, but then the game's like, yeah, we made $10-20 million like last month.
This is why all these publishers want to make everything a live service. Yeah.
On one hand, we don't have to pay for the game. On the other hand, it's gross to see in the game. So yeah. It's a huge trade-off.
Oh, the thing is, so there's always the argument that you could play the game for free if there's no like pay to win mechanics. You could play the game for free and still get the same experience. But I think that's really underplaying how much enjoyment people get out of customization. Like even when it comes to like, an RPG, like the Elder Scrolls games, people would boot up that new game and then spend like an hour or maybe even longer just creating the character, because it's a form of expression and people want to take the time to make a character that looks cool, and there's some fun out of doing that. Like there's so many games that are adding in create a character. Like Street Fighter 6 has a campaign mode where you can make a really goofy looking character or a really cool looking character. But the point being, like, customization can be tied to how much a person's enjoyment is with the game. And having these really high prices being normalized is frustrating for people who want to get extra enjoyment through the customization. With Splitgate specifically, trying to talk smack about Call of Duty, and one of the things that people criticize a lot about Call of Duty is the microtransactions. It seems like they're just talking smack, but yet also doing the exact same thing. And what they could have done is been like, okay, yeah, we priced ours more reasonably so that you can purchase more. If you enjoy these cool skins and animations, like, hey, have at it.
Yeah, and I wonder for the prices, I can imagine that a lot of people that work at the company don't like the prices. They probably had, like, I don't know this. Like, sometimes you bring in a consultant, come in and say, what is the price we should set these things at? Sometimes you're just like, let's give it just throw a number on the wall and hope it'll sell. But there's different methodologies you can do to set this price. And generally, if something's expensive, the developers themselves will be like, that's kind of gross. I don't like that. Because especially if it's a game that you care about, then you don't like these practices. It's the business side that is going to be like, look, we got to do this to pay people and stay in business.
When I was at Treyarch, we had this dude. He started a little bit after me. He wasn't working for Treyarch. He was working for Activision. So I guess so they can move him around if need be. But he had his own office, and I can't remember how many people he worked with. I think he had like 2 or 3 people under him. But this guy had like a PhD in economy or something like that. Really, really nice guy. But his whole job was about the that was his whole job, like microtransactions and getting people to buy stuff. Like that was his entire position. So at least with Treyarch, it wasn't like bringing a consultant. Like we had like a full-time dude with a PhD.
Yeah, I know. Like casinos will bring in people that are good at psychology to say what are some of the things that we should do for these casinos, and like some of it's like, oh, add a vanilla scent, because that vanilla scent will get people to be a little happier. Do these minor things. It's why you can't, like, a good casino, you don't know what time it is. Like they block that out so that, it's all psychology, and that all got translated to games with, I talked about this on my channel in the past. When Facebook came out, it became extremely data driven. And then those practices shifted into mobile, because it kind of spun out from Facebook into mobile pretty quickly. And then a lot of those executives that were pushing that data-driven approach then got shoved into all of these executive roles all across the games industry. And they pushed for these very same things, where it was like, we need economists, we need maybe somebody that works on psychology. Like we need all these things, we need all these metrics we need to push it into live service. So it all... Yeah, Farmville really ruined the industry, basically.
So one more thing I want to talk about, again, like the gameplay itself, because a lot of people have been criticizing the game, saying like, yeah, it's you're trying to claim to be something different, but you just announced a battle royale rather than doing something different. You're talking about how you want Titanfall 3, but you're basically Halo but with portals. And even then, there's criticism that Splitgate 1 had a higher emphasis on portals, while Splitgate 2 has less emphasis and less areas where you can use the portals. I'll chime in on my thoughts from a design viewpoint as to like why the game has less portals than the original game, while Splitgate 2 does it less, is because from a design standpoint, like balance is very important, and the more options you give a player, then that leads to more edge cases and more things that you have to account for, in which the player can do that you have to make sure doesn't break the game. For example, just being able to, exploit using the portals, or maybe going too fast, going through multiple portals, like adding some like momentum limit, like so you're not going too fast going through multiple portals. Like if you compare a custom made map in Portal 2 versus the actual campaign of Portal 2, you can find lots of custom made maps where you could do crazy weird things, while in the actual campaign of Portal 2, they restrict where you can place the portals in a way that you're not going to like exploit the puzzles, and it's more straightforward. So from like a design standpoint, that's why they would reduce the amount of portals. I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm not saying that makes the game better. I'm just saying like that's why from a design standpoint they would want to reduce the emphasis on using portals. Oujirou, you want to chime in? Is there like anything like, is it more cost efficient to use less portals?
Engineering wise, I don't think it really matters too much. But I would point out to games like Tribes. Like Tribes 2 came out a while back. I played the original Tribes 1 when it came out. A lot of custom maps. It was a really fun game. But one of the issues that it had was it had an insanely high skill ceiling. Because it was very much into like, yeah, you had your jetpacks like you have in Splitgate, but you also had the ability to like ski around the map. So if you would have a game where it was like capture the flag, you'd have somebody that was really good at that skiing mechanic that was just like moving lightning fast around the map, and like they could finish a round super fast. It was if you were on the winning team, you're just like, oh, the rounds are over. Okay, cool. But if you were losing, the whole experience was terrible. So
I knew there's a reason why I liked you. I was very big on Tribes 2 back in high school. That was the game that got me into multiplayer, online multiplayer.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. PlanetSide was another like really fun one when it wasn't, that game had a lot of issues. If you were just playing it correctly, it was fine. But then, I think it was client authoritative. So it was like one hacker would go in and could just like kill everybody. I think grenades were the only thing that was like server authoritative. So if you had like a big battle, the only thing that really worked was you threw grenades, because the other characters didn't render. So you couldn't even shoot at them if you wanted. So like there's a lot of balanced things that kind of go behind a lot of these decisions. And I don't know what that looks like there. What I can say is like, because I did a quick look at like the numbers. So like it looks like Splitgate through SteamDB is only looking at like, a couple hundred players peak on first, at least Steam. So they know their audience through their metrics that they've collected to say, what are the things that people engage with the most. And I don't know if like when I play the game, I mostly ignore the portals. I'm just like, whatever. I just want to shoot people. Like, I'm not like, oh, how do I do this cool like portal thing here or there? Because I'm not a super great gamer. Like, as the years go by, I get less and less good at things like FPS games.
So, final thoughts on the situation. I feel like the CEO, Ian, my personal opinion, like he's being a goofball, like just being very tone deaf about a lot of this, tone deaf about the hat, tone deaf about people's reactions to the pricing. Like he wasn't taking accountability to the pricing. Like he said, when people complain about the $80 bundle, he said something along the lines that, it's not his fault. It was this former employee who's ex Call of Duty, and blamed it on him. And then also he said that it's news to him that he didn't realize it was $80, which he's the lead game designer as well as the CEO of the company. Like, how do you not know what's going on? Like, I think like he's fumbling this really badly and just dropping the ball all over the place. What are your final thoughts, Oujirou?
I think it hasn't looked great. Still like kind of flip-flopping on stuff. At the same time though, like the market will decide. Like whoever who's going to play it is going to play it, and then they're going to, they'll see how many people actually interact with the microtransactions. I don't wish the studio to like go under or anything. I hope they're able to find their audience and like stay in business. So they come off as like passionate people about games, even if the CEO's like, look, sorry about X, Y, and Z. So I don't know. We'll see in time, like what they're able to do. I hope they can fix some of the issues in the game, add some more like cosmetics and stuff in that people can get for free to get that kind of progression feeling. I think they could have handled the whole release a little better. I do think it's good for people that are in the industry to call out a lot of the bad practices of the industry.
Yeah.
That's something that I think everyone's super afraid of doing because like there's in general, like toxic positive, like if you look at like LinkedIn groups where people are just like, oh no, this is super great. Good on you. Good on you. And you're looking at the product and you're like, you can't sustain 30 or 40 people with this product.
I
like,
hate
what
LinkedIn
are you doing?
so much.
It's such a cesspool. It is toxic positivity, the website or app if you're on your phone, I guess. But
well, to me, LinkedIn is like another Facebook, and I left Facebook years ago.
yeah,
it's bad.
We need to be able to critique the industry without people like losing their minds.
Yeah.
And I think another thing that we need is to be able to have blunt conversations where a lot of people are just like, oh no, you're going to hurt their feelings if you say X, Y, or Z. And that's a really toxic leadership trait that's been pushed around where people are more like, you need to be their friend instead of to be their manager or their lead. And like, so yeah, the hat thing was, I don't see any issue with saying like, I have issues with these games for X, Y, and Z. Like I was hoping for like a Titanfall 3 as well. Like that would have been nice.
Yeah.
But a lot of these franchises are just these things that just pump out new games as fast as possible to get people to buy the box price, to then re-engage with all the microtransactions, and you lose the microtransactions you purchased on the last game. It's a really crummy model for the consumer. So yeah, I'd love for more people just to come out and be like, this all sucks. Like, this is terrible. Like, shame on you guys for engaging in this. But people get it too in their feelings over the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because they treat it as a personal attack on themselves because they can't separate themselves from the product they're working on.
Yeah, yeah.
But
it's something you have to learn over time to like be able to take critique and not take it personally. Like there's been critique I've gotten on my projects before, and it's like, ooh, this hurts. It feels like it sucks. But I mean, it's at the same time, like after giving it a second, it's like, this was really important for me to get all this feedback.
Yeah. And I think in general, like especially with the newer generations, they're really, really bad at receiving any kind of critique and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And hopefully other people look at it and learn from it as well, to be able to be like, okay, we need to be impactful, but also stay out of anything on the politics side. I think that's in general a really easy way to get people upset with you, because it's an unforced error where, again, nobody wants to hear any kind of political stuff from game developers at this point, because we've for years heard like really extreme views from people and like had a lot of stuff pushed into games, which has just made the games a lot worse. And that doesn't mean we should do it on the other side now. Like, I think people should just focus on making good games, making good stories, making good worlds. And like that should be your primary focus. And if someone's like, I want to inject my worldview, like no matter what the worldview is, like you need to step back, and like that should not be the focus.
I'm not gonna go too much into this because I feel like it's a topic on its own, but I feel like sharing controversial opinions or differing opinions and worldviews, I feel like for the most part, as long as there's nuance to it and it's not bashing someone on the head, I think people are more accepting of it if there's like a bit of a nuance. And the main issue is when it's just like hammering someone's head and you're just being very blunt about it. I think that's the main issue. Yeah. Well, I don't want to go too into that because I feel like that's a whole
totally different topic.
Yeah. But anyways, check out Oujirou's channel. He talks about a lot of the same topics I do, but his takes are very different from mine. So check him out if you enjoyed this talk. Like, share, subscribe. Thank you very much. Take care. Salam.
Farewell.